Hey everybody, Mason Buckles here, and so pleased to introduce Leka Devatha with Rehabit Homes. Leka's going to share with us more about her journey today and really just all the success she's had over the last decade in the real estate space here in Seattle. Leka, thank you for your time. We met just a few months ago.
Yes.
And honestly, your story, your success, everything was so inspiring that I had to have you here to sit down and learn more and share more with our audience. Would you mind just kind of giving an overview for those that haven't been introduced to you yet as to kind of your journey from where you started and where you are today?
First of all, thank you so much for having me, because when I met you, actually I met you while we were both speaking on stage, and I was like, where has he been all my life? Like, we gotta start working together. So it was such a cool discovery for me. So I'm really excited to be here. But yes, so my journey, I first moved to the country back in 2006. So it's been about 17 years now. And the first few years of my life, I was in fashion merchandising. And while I just absolutely loved my job, I always wanted to do something different, something more entrepreneurial. And that's how real estate became an option to me. So I started very basic, trying to learn what it was all about. Like, what was owning property? What does that look like? How many properties can I own? How many properties can I renovate, fix? How can I buy them? I didn't come in with money.
Right.
And so how would I build that portfolio or build experience by doing it one project at a time? Starting from the basic of not having anything to building it up to, essentially today.
Right.
And so through the course of my real estate journey, which is about a decade now, I have, flipped over 100 homes. I've renovated hundreds of projects. I have a pretty good rental portfolio here in the Seattle market. I've worked in other markets. I've basically just really dove into real estate investing and saw it from many different angles and tried to learn something different and something new every year. So
very good.
Yeah, that's been.
So when you were first getting started, were you primarily focused on more of the flip side, or was that just a kind of progression as you bought a few homes and you were like, okay, maybe I can start to go that route?
No, I started with a massive 6-figure flip.
Okay.
Where I didn't make 6 figures, I spent 6 figures. So
fair enough.
So I started with buy flipping homes, and I started with full gut renovation, and that just became my thing.
Okay.
Is as I started to progress, I just took on more of those full gut renovations because you could buy them cheaper and there was more room to fail. But also there was a lot more room to make money on. Right, so that's really been my thing, is full gut renovations. At least that's how we started, and that's how it's really going.
Still going, yes.
Still going, yeah.
Very good. You mentioned working in multiple markets. One of the things that I thought was really interesting when I started to learn more about your story was just how active and much success you found in our Seattle market. What other markets are you working in or have worked in?
So I am part of a huge syndication deal in Florida. I have bought other properties. I bought a triplex in Florida. I did a massive renovation project in North Carolina. Those are all really hot markets, but I just, through buying those and through doing those deals, realized that out-of-state investing is not for me. It's super difficult. Even though you have solid boots on the ground, it is super difficult to run projects successfully, and I have only failed at it. So I realized that my market is Seattle, and I should just stick to in-state and within my area of investing, because every market has its own nuances, and there's a bunch of people that do out-of-state investing, and more power to them, but I just feel like that's not something I want to pursue actively. Now I'll still invest in syndications outside my market with good operators, but I don't know if I'll do another active project.
Can you give an example of one of the challenges that you experienced when you were dealing with boots on the ground versus the syndication channel? I think for people that are looking at the Seattle market, one of the challenges is the price point that we see here, and really being able to find that, that buy box like you speak to. But for those that are looking abroad, someone who's experienced as yourself who's had those challenges, what would be an example of that?
So for example, one of my biggest challenges is finding really good contractors, but then not just finding them, actually getting them to do the work.
Right.
We ended up hiring one of the best contractors in the Raleigh market, and he stopped showing up to work within 4 months of starting the project. He said that he had pulled all the permits, but hadn't pulled any permits. So, things like that happen. And it happens here in my market too, but I am much more quicker to react.
Right.
When I am right here, I can see the project in my eyes.
You can go check in.
Or I'm better at catching these like red flags before it happens. But when you're out of state, it's out of sight, out of mind. And so it's much harder to run those projects. And especially because these are larger single family flips, you have to do them right. And so contractors is a big deal. Second, knowing that city zoning laws and permit laws, and not having any like really solid network in that market also can be challenging, because like, who are you going to reach out to? You don't know anyone there.
I think the contractor piece is a really common challenge that you hear about, but not everybody considers the permitting side and just all the city work that has to be done. That of course you build rapport locally, you can do so, but as you're out of state could be a big challenge. So that's a great point for sure. One of the things that you talk about often is like your buy box, right?
Yes.
And how you're identifying deals and really, being disciplined within that. Can you share with us kind of what that concept is and then how you execute it?
So my buy box has changed. It has, morphed over the years. When I first started, I would buy anything that someone called a deal. Now I am super picky. I look at like 30 deals and then buy one house, or a building, or, a project. So it has changed. In just speaking about flips, because I do that largely, I would say anything on a busy street, I avoid. And people ask me all the time, like, hey, what's your location sweet spot? I don't have one. For me, it's more of a profit and like, acquisition spread. Like, how much profit can I make on this project? So it doesn't matter if it's in Everett or Tacoma, I'll still do it because there's a profit spread. So what am I actually buying it for? Next, I think just construction-wise, it has to be a versatile floor plan. Before I've done like basement dig downs and just really solid additions and major renovations structurally to a home. But now I know that I can make a lot more spread by just sticking with the basics and still being within the footprint, but not having to dormer roofs or lift houses or dig down basements. Those are just, it's not necessary.
Right.
And then the other thing too is obviously having good neighbors help. But, there's a lot of times it's like, okay, how can I, add sizzle features into this project to make any kind of buy box work?
Yeah.
So
what's an example of a sizzle feature?
Garages are huge, and believe it or not, a lot of my projects are in the Ballard shoreline area, so not Seattle. Homes don't have garages, and it's a lot of street parking. So garages are great. Curb appeal is everything for me, and great kitchens, double dishwashers. It doesn't even have to be an expensive home, but little things like that. Great master, like a master suite. Those are important things.
One of the things that you've talked about often that I've seen firsthand in the time that we were on stage together is the shifting marketplace around DADUs.
Yes.
Can you explain or share a little bit more about how you're identifying those properties and what you're looking for when you're thinking about potentially a project that would have that included?
That's like, I think everybody's favorite thing right now is adding a detached accessory dwelling unit to an existing single family house, and I'm doing a couple myself. So what I look for is easy lots again. So lots that typically have two streets are the best, a street in front and a street in the back. I try to stay away from flag lots.
Right.
I want to always make sure if there's not a full street in the back, there's at least an alleyway. But first of all, the project just needs to make sense. So if you can buy that whole house like for a much lower price point, and it's a good looking house in front, you have to minimally remodel it and then put a great dado in the back, that's great. Now the state of Washington passed a law, right? Like, so there's no single family zoning. So essentially every lot you can put a dado or 2 townhomes or up to 4 units. But the trick is a lot of cities are not adopting that law. And then ultimately it's up to the city on whether or not they'll allow it. Like the city of Shoreline, for example, hasn't adopted it. And they think they'll adopt it in the next year, but we don't know that for sure.
Right.
So if you end up buying a house thinking, yeah, I'm going to put 3 other units, I mean, until the city is positive that they're actually going that route, don't do it.
You could just be sitting there holding
You can just be sitting there. But the city of Seattle, amazing place to add dados. So I would just make sure. And then there's resources online where you can go see if the lot is actually conducive to a dado. You know, it includes street coverage, width and depth of the lot, setbacks from the street. So just a bunch of other things that are more technical.
Doing your diligence around it.
And doing your due diligence, yeah.
Okay, so I'm a budding investor. I've seen you on BiggerPockets. I've seen you on other, podcasts, and obviously you're an expert at what you do. What is the number one thing I shouldn't do if I'm thinking about taking on my first project?
I would say the number one thing that you should do is find a mentor that is actively doing a flip or a large-scale renovation.
So don't do it on my own.
Yeah. Don't do it on your own, because I did it on my own. And I just feel like if I had a mentor that was doing it successfully, that I just did one project with them, either as a private lender or a deal finder or something, find some way to add value to them that they would then let me shadow them on their project. I could have avoided making a lot of mistakes when I first started. And I think there's so many nuances to flipping a house or to positioning an asset to stabilize that if you don't have all that experience and then the network and the right knowledge, you can ultimately, you can make money on your first deal, second deal, third deal, but then somewhere down the line, you're going to lose a lot of money.
Right.
But if you do it right the first time, you can actually take larger projects, better projects. I've had a lot of mentees, and I don't have a coaching program or anything. So the way that I coach people is, if they invested in my deal, then they get to see the deal from start to finish. Right. How did I buy it? How do I fix it up? How do I either sell it or stabilize it by putting renters in there? How do I refinance it, right? I go through the whole process with them. And what that allows them is to understand the whole process from a top-down view, which now what my mentees do, it's amazing. Because one of them just bought a huge house and a lot in Seattle, where he's actually going to build 7 units.
Amazing. Yeah.
And he gained that confidence and that experience from just being on one of my projects.
Working with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, you think about, and it's such a cool way to share that experience. Obviously, still capture upside from a business standpoint.
Right.
But know that you're building that network where I have to imagine that's part of, you mentioned that I love the term deal finder, right?
Yes.
I have to imagine that, with all the success and, some of the challenges that you've experienced over the last 10 years, that's a big part of how that has come together for you. Give me a day in the life of Leka as the deal finder.
Okay, so I do network with a lot of people, and they could be brokers, they could be fellow investors. I also host a meetup, so it's, really reaching out in my network. So and when someone brings me a deal, I take it super seriously. So I'm always driving to properties, talking to the city about just land use planning, and then zoning experts. And then I am actively renovating 8 projects right now. So it's about going to different projects and going and, checking on work. I still, to this day, I pick all my finishes. So I'm also working on picking finishes, what vanities go with what tile, what paint colors. So doing all of that. So that's all one day's worth of work. And then some.
Never mind the family, the kids, all the other things.
All of that. Go working out, eating healthy, just bring it on.
Yep.
All of it.
Gotta have it all.
Well,
I know it can't all be, upside and profits. Give me an example of a horror story, whether it's financial or just in general that you've experienced as an investor.
There's lots of horror stories. And if you've met an investor that's been in the business for 10 years and they have zero horror stories, like run in the opposite direction.
Right,
Because
if they're
that's
just
not true.
batting 1,000.
Yeah. So I just did that flip in North Carolina where when I bought the deal, I was going to make 300 grand, and instead I lost 100 grand.
Oh, wow.
And so, and that's just cost of doing business. So, lots of things like that. I was on my drive back home yesterday and I got 2 calls. One was from a property manager that is taking over one of my Airbnbs. It's a 10-bed, 6-bath house in Shoreline, and he's taking it over. And he said that the previous property manager had basically never washed the linen. So there was mountains of linen in the storage closets, just sitting there unwashed.
Oh.
And so it's, it's gross. And I'm like, wow, what was she doing? I don't know. But anything small like that okay, we just, we sold this project, but it's $100K loss. Like, there's lots of fires to put out every day. It's not easy. But at the same time, the rewards are high because, the work that you put in has to be at that level too.
Right. No, that makes sense. I think the thing that's really impressive is to see how you manage it all. And, just getting a chance to spend some time with you over the last few months, I feel like I'm checking every once in a while, like, how you doing okay? And you're just like, oh yeah, 9,000 RPM and go, but crushing it in every way, which is really, really impressive. You touched on it earlier, the fact that you do have a portfolio that you've retained. What do you think are the pros and cons of like a flip versus building out that portfolio, and how do you strike that balance?
Yeah. So with a flip, it's active income and it's active work, which is great. But then my portfolio just grows every year and I don't really have to actively be involved because I also have a property manager that manages all my rentals. So I think it's really important for you, if you want to grow as an investor, grow as a person, to make active income, but then definitely put that into cash flowing, long-term appreciating assets. I often tell people that I'm the richest poor person I know because I never have money because all the money I make goes right back into my real estate portfolio. And so I'm like, okay, so I just fixed up this. I spent $500,000 on it. I'm not going to see that money till I actually sell the asset. Right. So I have great, high equity assets, but, not enough cash flow. So always know, I guess, your own, financial scope. Like, what is it that you want at this given time? Is it active income? Is it passive income? Like, what's important to you? Mm-hmm. I think that is a huge indication of whether you should be flipping homes or buying long-term rentals and focusing on long-term rentals. But if you do have active income, from other jobs or your active investments, most certainly put that into your passive. When I first started looking at even owning a rental property, it was back in 2017. And I ended up buying 2 houses then. One cost $128,000 in Tacoma. The other costs $230K in Marysville. And last year I sold the 2 combined for $1 million.
Amazing.
And so it's just, I'm like, okay, I could have actually sold some flips, taken all that active income and put it into more flips, but then I wouldn't have made all this appreciation.
Right. The liquidity event has the higher return over time, but it's the active kind of churn you can do as well.
So if you can balance that out, that's the best kind.
It's the secret sauce.
Secret sauce.
Yeah. You've talked about it a little bit in our time today, but maybe you can help, again, let's say a newer investor or someone who's thinking about getting into this, understand the importance of the relationships that you've built.
Yes.
Thinking about, the wholesaler, the contractor, your financial team, et cetera.
Right.
Like, how do you go about identifying those parts of the puzzle? How have you been connected to them over time? And what are you doing to nurture those relationships?
Yeah, that's great because real estate is one where you don't have to have W-2 employees. They can all be 1099s. Right. What that means is you don't have to necessarily have an in-house team, but as you grow, you can add people to your team and you can pay them as a consultant. You can, pay them for the deals that they bring you. And so just because of that, I've worked with pretty much the same people since I started. I have the same escrow agents, I have the same stagers, same contractors. And I think it's really important to find that tribe. Like when I first started, people were like, find your team, find your tribe, and then hang on to them. And I didn't know the importance of that till today, because when I look back and I'm like, oh, I couldn't have done that and achieved this because if I didn't have that team.
Right.
And I think just taking care of my team, first, everybody needs to get paid. And if they're happy and they're getting paid, then you are getting paid.
Right.
Second, if you take care of them, they take care of you. So there could be times when, I listed a property, then decided, no, I actually want to hold it as a long-term rental. I still paid that broker for their time. And so I think it's important to just grow and nurture relationships. And also, I'm really good at connecting people. So I'm like, okay, maybe I won't use Mason to do a loan for me today, but I know I'm going to introduce him to 4 other people that are going to do that loan. Like, just taking care of people.
Operating with high integrity and honoring what you're building.
True.
Yeah.
Giving them opportunities, putting them on stages. Like, my listing broker has been listing properties for me for 6 years. And I get to interview her this week on a huge stage. And so I'm making sure that they have the opportunities for their own growth is super helpful.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little more about all that you do in this real estate space. You've co-authored books, you host your meetups, you've been on many, many podcasts, you've been the host of one of the biggest investor events in the country. What's next? What do you got coming on deck for us?
So I'm just about to jump into something I've never done before, a 6-unit townhome development project. And that's graduating from flips into majorly construction, right? In larger units, and that comes with its own challenges, and it's so exciting. But I think for me, it's always every year, it's what can I learn to just up my skill set and up level myself. Hosting BiggerPockets was one of the best experiences I've had in my life. It's I can't even tell you. It was a dream coming to real estate, being maybe one day, I was I might be on the BiggerPockets podcast too.
Yeah.
Then being on the podcast and then hosting the biggest real estate event. I don't know if I can ask for more. I would love to write a book.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that, but that would be really cool.
Yeah,
it's just,
awesome. Sharing more of your story then?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Leka, you've shared so much today. I know people are just going to need to know where to find you. Where can we see you online? How can we follow you? How can we learn more?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram. You can follow me, and my handle is Leka Devatha. I'm on LinkedIn actively, and also I host a meetup in Seattle once a month. Definitely attend those. They're great for networking. They're great for, building your community. Yeah. And we have some amazing speakers. Mason's going to be on it soon.
I will. Where's the meetup being?
The meetup is at my building on Dexter in South Lake Union.
What's the event space called again?
It's called Atmosphere.
That's right.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you.